there we go. I'll introduce this one a little bit.
Okay.
So I told you about the Palm Springs Photo Festival. So I drove to Palm Springs because the House of Charm was going to be shown there. And like I said, during the days, I wasn't doing any of the workshops. That I was not involved in anything during the days. And I had never been to Palm Springs or that area, even though I'm a more or less lifelong California resident. I spent the majority of my life here. So I was driving around and exploring, and I had my camera, and I was gonna go, I'd heard about 29 Palms because there's a military, there's military presence there. I thought I was gonna drive from Palm Springs to 29 Palms, and I stopped at the gas station to fill the gas tank, and I saw somebody sitting on this, sitting outside the door of the gas station who absolutely caught my eye. And I still remember having like a conversation with myself. I'm not usually very shy, but I felt a little shy. I really wanted to go introduce myself to this person who in that moment, I didn't know if it was a man or a woman. I was just like, oh my gosh, like kind of the way he would, I don't know, some David Bowie. I was so captivated. And I was a little shy, and so I decided, okay, I'll just go into the gas station to buy something to drink, and then I'll use that as an excuse to say hello.
Yes.
That is how I met Valerie. And I'll tell you, I'll play this, and then we can talk more.
Sure.
And this, I prepared it for the Palm Springs. I prepared it, never submitted it to them, but that's why it has music.
Sunshine beating on the good times, moonlight rising from the grave, string band playing more honky tonks, pretty young thing going dancing in the rain. I hear ladies spitting at the Nicky Jacks, businessman with a needle and a spoon, coyote chewing on a cigarette, pack of young boys going howling at the moon. Sleeping on the blacktop, through the trees, honey. For the next time, that's my set sketches up with me. Number 4, 2 witnesses belong. Not sure whose will be done. You can call me a sinner for a wondering why. Sleeping on the blacktop, through the trees, honey. Leaving for the next time. Send sketches up with me. Corn liquor tastes sweeter in this town. Could it be it's the same as the last? I swear I've seen your face elsewhere before, just as familiar as a bottle and a glass. Hey, darling, sleeping on the blacktop. Hey, darling, through the trees, honey. Hey, darling, leaving for the next town. Listen, my set sketches up with me. Hey, darling, sleeping on the blacktop.
Oh, wow. This is the best one. This series. This is beautiful.
Sketches up with me. Send sketches up with me.
Okay.
Wow, that's great.
I don't like the edit so much, but I left things out. But it yeah, I actually get I haven't. It makes me a little emotional looking at these ones,
Absolutely.
actually. So yeah, what should I tell you?
You know, it seemed close. No, it's emotional for sure. And it seems closer, even though those other women seem more like you or something like that. There's something when we saw this woman sitting in the car next to you, suddenly it seemed like you let her in more or something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, her name is Valerie Rufo. And yeah, she's the one I met at the gas station. And I ended up that first trip, I think it was that first trip. Maybe I got home and went back down. I don't really remember. But my car broke down and I ended up having 3 weeks stuck in Palm Springs. Or I didn't feel stuck. So we had a really intensive first, and then I went back a number of times. I drive to Palm Springs, which is a long drive. And sometimes I couldn't even find her. I made probably a couple trips where I just couldn't find her.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a long way to drive to not get to do what you set out to do. But yeah, what can I tell you? We did, in some ways when I've described my Valerie and my relationship with her, it was, in a way, it was like a love affair. You know, it wasn't a love affair, but I just kind of fell for her. It was this super duper intense relationship, and it was a friendship. And I say was because I haven't seen her in quite a few years. But we had, you know, it alternated between just having so much fun together, laughing and really having fun, which you don't see in these pictures so much.
Yeah.
And also it was really intense. And I learned over time, she is an alcoholic and a drug addict. And her drug of choice is methamphetamine. And I didn't know this about meth. I since have spent quite a bit of time with meth users, mostly among Valerie's, the people on the street in Palm Springs. And I learned that there's this meth-induced psychosis. And sometimes she was so crazy and hostile and mean and, told me to fuck off. And other times she has a brilliant, I think it's not an exaggeration that she's, very, 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 very smart. And really is someone who just she came into the world in a rough family and never had a break. And whereas she should have, like, all it would have taken, because I still think she's very beautiful. She was really stunningly gorgeous as a young woman. And she was a talented athlete. She has a great way with words. And I just always thought, my God, where was the one adult who could have just helped her, recognized her? Instead, she has a really, really, really intensely tragic story. And this I was really overt, like, about this being a collaboration and wanting to tell her story together, to use her writing and her voice. And, I have I'm not good with video at all. I have a bunch of video and audio someplace that I haven't touched. But it's there, and I think I should go into it at some point because her voice is super powerful. I mean, the things she says and the way she says them. I have less of her writing, I have a little bit. I met a number of her family members. Again, I see how I edit out the other people. It's not really intentional, but there are other people in her life.
Mm-hmm.
not, not, her family, she's not even really even allowed to go to her mother's house anymore, even to go into the yard. Um, and she has 11 children, most of whom live around the Palm Springs area. And I met maybe just one. I know some of her siblings. So I don't know, what else?
This picture right here, I think, is really something.
Oh, how do I go back to it? The one with her under the tree?
Yeah. It's like, here is a closed system.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we it's preceded by her smoking crack, so it just seems, I don't know what's going on in that tent. But it's like, here is where I am a closed system, and I'm living in this little thing. Or smoking whatever it is she's smoking.
Yeah,
or,
it's meth, yeah.
And then the kind of beauty of the light there is also a thing, that kind of desert light. And then the ubiquitousness, or whatever the word is, of parking lot spaces, and I don't know.
Yeah, I will say that this was physically really challenging and gave me really a lot of empathy. It was summertime. I mean, most of the times I was there, I went different times of year, but it's always hot there. But in the summer, it is 115, 118 degrees.
Yeah.
And there, shouldn't have been there are a lot of homeless people in down there, and they don't have anywhere to go. You're really outside, and the grass, I learned, is full of these biting ants. So often the concrete is where you have to choose between the blazing concrete or being bitten up by these insects.
Yeah.
You're lucky. I can remember ducking into McDonald's to pee and thinking, oh my God, this is like the most fabulous place I have ever been.
Yeah.
Is the McDonald's bathroom. It was just like such a sanctuary.
Right. Air conditioning and
clean, nothing. And yeah, so, and I, of course, I would be out with her for 12 or 15 hours, and then I would go back to a hotel room and take a shower and sleep in a bed.
Right.
And I would tuck her in at the Bank of America or Walmart or wherever it was where she was going to sleep.
Now there's an image where she's sleeping in a Lazy Boy recliner. What?
Yeah. With Bernie Sanders on the TV. Yeah. That, again, see, that's a part, I guess it's kind of like incongruous, I see. She had a relationship with a man on and off for, a long time. He was a boyfriend or a lover. It was a really complicated relationship. But Mike had a place. He lived in a big mobile home up in, I forget the name, but outside of Palm Springs, Yucca Valley. And she went there periodically. And that was at his house. So sometimes she went there, sometimes she didn't. It usually didn't end that well. She'd leave and they had a very tumultuous relationship. Mm-hmm. And that's in Mike's house. Yeah, I realized how incongruous it is because she really didn't live there, but she was at home there in some ways.
Yeah. There is something different about this project. It is emotional, but then she also seems the most distant from you, where those other women almost seem like they could be your friend or something like that.
Yeah.
But then there is something. Where
is Mike's house?
Actually, I lost my train of thought there.
Yeah.
Here's what it was there is something that seems a bit more traditional documentary about this, almost in the way that we see her in the day, in the night. We see the scope of things, where it seems like your other projects, it's kind of like they had even with Lee, who was in your neighborhood, it kind of felt like, well, this is a daytime thing. You know what I mean? Like,
Uh-huh. Yeah. And, I guess, I have one of my peers at Davis, she really she doesn't like my work. She doesn't like what I do. And she calls this, she says, my work is poverty porn. And, I guess it is a cliche, almost, of documentary photography to photograph people on the street and people, and, addicts, people with addiction issues. And, I don't know how I met Valerie. I was compelled to photograph her. She was so into it, and she really wanted her story told. And yeah.
oh, I think you got to just move forward with whatever you're fascinated with. People are
Right.
gonna-
And I really, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I can just get in the car and go down there now. It's probably not a smart time, but I would like to go look for her.
Yeah, yeah. That does bring up an interesting thing. Yeah, I want to hear the students try to maybe comment on is, like, when you do work that's about looking at others, you are going to be criticized. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I have been for every single project I've done,
Uh-huh.
but I am a believer that you got to do these things. And to be honest, in this culture we're in now, people are going to hate anything. So, like,
Yeah.
they're going to hate it whether you do it or don't do it. So you might as well do it.
Yeah.
Do you have any observations on that?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess it was, in some ways, at first I was, it's no fun to be criticized and have your work, like, trashed and your motives trashed. And I realize as I get more, like, it took me a little bit to bounce back, but I'm like, no, this isn't poverty porn. I feel good about my motivations. I feel good about the work I've done. I understand the complexities and the risk of feeling like you're exploiting somebody, but I feel confident enough in my own motivation and my own actions that I can say thank you very much, and then think, like, oh, is there something I can do to make sure that isn't the message I'm broadcasting to everybody, and take it in as feedback and do with it what's valuable. Take what's valuable and toss what's not. And it's not always easy to do. We all know that it extends beyond your art. We get criticism and feedback in our life, and it rarely feels great. And sometimes it's really spot on, and sometimes there's it's very colored by the person who's talking to you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, there's always something to learn from it.
Right. There's something to learn from it.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think every project I've done that got attention, it was criticized. And after the first one was crushing to me. And then by the second one, I was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you do find ways to handle these things.
Yeah. Oh, go on.
Oh, well, students, I would take to you. Has anyone dealt with criticisms on their project that they felt they had to navigate around? No? Sean, you giving the finger to your roommates and stuff like that? Everybody loved that? He laughs. You don't have to answer if it's not relevant, but I do want to open that up to you all. Because criticism is a big part of whenever you're doing anything, especially if it's of other people or something, there's going to be that out there,
Yeah, definitely. And I guess I can't even remember the rest of it. I'm sure there's been much more. I know around Lee, people are like, what are you doing? You know, you have to call social services and get that woman out of that house, and you are being irresponsible. And I think I told you about it. I kind of had to process that and come to a place where I felt good about it. Oh, and I know this is a little bit of a change in topic, and I don't know if it's interesting to you, but I mentioned how I had these two different photographers I admired and knew and who I went to sometimes for advice and feedback.
Yeah.
And how different, you know, Darcy, I think she is different, working differently now. But yeah, for instance, and this is another hard thing, was different with Lee than with Carol, but you know, clearly I am photographing someone here who has nothing, right? She has nothing. And she didn't get any, a lot of people I know, you know, get SSI, so they have money at the first of the month, and it's gone. Valerie didn't get any money. So, and there's that, you know, I'm here photographing her all day long, and I need to eat and drink a little bit. And am I going to do that and not offer her food and water?
Oh yeah.
And food and drink. And I bought her cigarettes, and I bought her beer sometimes. And Darcy would say, you can't have that beer. You can't have anything you provided her in the photographs, and actually it's a no to do that. I think this is a long time ago. I would question whether she would say the same thing today, so I don't want to really attach it to her.
Yeah.
And my other friend was like, oh my God, of course it's okay, and you just be you and interact with her, you know, however you are inclined to. And you don't need all those professional boundaries and guidelines. Just go for it and don't worry. And I remember really grappling then with those different points of view. And I landed on the one, like, I'm just going to do what I feel good about. And if it means buying cigarettes and beer, you know, I'm not going to buy any drugs. I'm not going to pay for hotel rooms. And Valerie and I actually spoke very, very openly about these things, about how my presence colored things, and what boundaries I felt I had to keep, or what rules I felt I had to follow. I was very, very, very transparent with her, and we talked a lot about it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how other people work actually in these situations.
I think a lot of those things come into play, like if you're representing the New York Times and you're representing...
Right. It would be very different if I was doing this for the New York Times. And then, another thing is I also spent, if I was working for the New York Times, I tried very, very, very hard. At one point, she wanted to get into rehab. And I tried so hard to find her a bed, and I failed. And I learned so much about just how horrible the system is, or how we are lacking in proper systems, you know. And then by the time I started to make some progress, weeks had passed, and she was over wanting to get clean, you know. The window had come and gone.
Yeah.
At least for then.
Yeah. This is a powerful story. Do you have any questions on this? And this does break your type in a way, or does it not? I don't know.
I mean, I to me it's very different, but I could see, it depends how people, definitely a woman living outside of, who does not live the way most of us live, in an acceptable way, in a familiar way. I guess that's the similarity.
There is some unusual physicality, though, between like her and your previous Sea Change project, where they almost, at times, they seem really young and healthy and stuff like that, like in a photo, you know, like with an attractive body and muscles. That, like, there's a picture of her where her muscles, it looks like an athlete's body, you know, like by the mountain range.
Yeah,
there's this weird thing where suddenly it's like, oh I know her, she's normal, and then suddenly it's like, oh no.
Yeah,
you know. that kind of push and pull, I think, is in all of these projects.
I like that, I think.
Oh, good.
I mean,
Here's a question from Jean. Technically, how do you choose to frame your images? Do you crop a lot? Or are you using a prime lens? Do you feel guilty if you have to crop out of the composition is not what you like? I mean, do you shoot wide the crop? Or do you shoot wide and then crop? I think
that's a great question. Well, this is part of my, my training or my upbringing was like, you do not crop. Yeah, it's a no, it's a bad thing to do. Don't do it. And I was very religious about that for a while. And because I think I've learned to frame my images pretty well. That said, I allow myself to crop it, almost exclusively very minimally. And not because I have an objection to it so much. For anyone else, it's just like, it's part of, I guess, the challenge for me is to figure it out in the camera. Mm-hmm. But I will crop if I need to. And I work almost exclusively, and I bet every single photograph in here, except for maybe a few from the first ones of Lee, are made with a 35 millimeter lens. It's the lens I like the most. I find it the most versatile. I've tried to work with a 50 millimeter, and I just don't do it so well.
Really? I would have thought that a lot of these are 50s.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure none of them are, especially occasionally with, for these, I only had one camera with me, I think, always. And in some of this, I don't carry a lot of gear.
Right.
I did sometimes with Valerie, I had a tape recorder and a microphone sometimes. But I think they're all 35 millimeter. And I'm not really proud of that. I wish I were a little more versatile. And now I actually have two cameras sitting out all the time, and I have a 50 millimeter and a 35 millimeter lens. I only have prime lenses, which is another thing. Lately I thought, I could use a different lens. Might be convenient to have. I forget. I don't even know the telephoto lenses or the whatever you call them. I don't even know what you call them.
Oh, a zoom lens.
Yeah, zoom lens. It just seems because some of them aren't it's so zoomy, but yeah. So yeah, only 35, and I crop minimally, and I also, some of these I think I could probably work on a little bit. I don't do a lot to them either. And again, I haven't touched these in a while. I think if I'm going to do something with them, I probably would work on some of the images a bit. And some of them I have, but not to change anything radically, just to get the skin tones as close to okay as I can.
Mm-hmm. It's curious to me, these are all long-term projects, so they feel that way. But you're going to school now. How does your work, how has your work changed since you've been a graduate student? Because these guys are all graduate students as well.
You guys want me to show? I think I have a screenshot I could show you. It's really different, I think. Or I wonder, I would be curious, is there time for me to just pull up a screenshot of what I'm doing? Let's see. I'll just tell you, I have not been photographing people mostly. Tim knows this. So I applied to graduate school, and in the literally right after I made the commitment to go, my husband of 20 years walked out the door, essentially. It wasn't exactly like that, but my marriage ended very, very suddenly and very shockingly to me. It was just completely out of the blue. And it really fucked me up and changed my life radically. And at the same time, I was about to go to school. So for a while, I didn't pick up my camera at all. And then I was I didn't even realize I was amassing I started looking in my archives and saw that I had been photographing, you know, around my house and my kids and my life for a while. I'd never really looked at the photographs. And so I kind of made a conscious choice to just photograph my life, you know, and not, I'm really, that meant like having my cameras sitting out and picking them up when I was motivated to, when I saw the light in my house in a certain way. Here, I'll just try to find something right now. And what was I gonna say? I realized, you know, and I also took my camera with me. I'm not a photographer who carries her camera with her everywhere she goes, but I did start carrying my camera a lot more. Not that I was really going anywhere. You know, I go on a walk in the hills every day. So I had my camera with me when I was walking. God, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to, well, I'm gonna try something, guys. There's no sequence. These are just some of the images that I've been working on or working with. I think if I do this, okay. Oh shoot! Now I can't. Let's see if I can share my screen. So anyway, it's a little different. I think this. Sorry.
Oh, interesting.
Here, I think I can just, and some of these I don't like, whatever. I can't edit them out, but this is, so I'd say this is a little bit of a, I'll just scroll through and you can, so this is what I've been doing since I've been in graduate school. And I did start to, oh yeah, that's a goner. I don't like that photograph. I did start to make some portraits, and then this shelter-in-place order happened, and I thought about trying to do them remotely the way I know some people are doing, and I need to be in the same room with someone I'm going to photograph. I decided that, though I think it's so cool that some people are photographing people through their computers. And publishing them. I know someone, you might know her, Tim, just because she's also photographed a lot of trans youth. Annie Tritt, you know her?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So she's been working for the New York Times from inside her apartment.
Well, she has COVID-19.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess on social media, you know, but those stories she's been, yeah, photographing.
I like these a lot. I do
Yeah.
think that when we look at your work, I want to know who the creator is too.
What do you mean?
Well, like you're looking at, like when I'm looking at your bodies of work that are about these other women, it makes me ask, well, what are you like? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what is it about you? Are you that? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, or are you very different from that? You know, and it's funny here, we had a photographer come in, a kind of photojournalist, documentary photographer, not as a guest artist to this class, to a documentary class. And the students kind of liked his work, and then when they met him, some of the students didn't trust the work after meeting him. Because I think they thought he was possibly using these topics, which are very much in vogue right now, to make him seem more empathetic than he really was. Or there was something about knowing who he was changed how the work was viewed.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think it does make it's nice to know who makes the work, I guess. And it does affect your perception of it.
I think it does. Yeah.
So anyway, stuff more like this.
That's interesting. No, I think that's an exciting turn for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot more, but whatever. I'm not so pleased with that's
well, it looks like the type of project that's not about getting one home run as much as it is about getting a lot of life.
Exactly. There are very few home runs. It's really this more impressionistic picture, and who knows what's going to happen with it, or if anything. But you know, I'm not as proud of it. I'm not as excited about it, but it's been a great, it's been a really interesting challenge and a nice thing to just know I can, you know, I always have this going in the background, just a few photographs a week probably.
Right. Right.
And some weeks nothing.
Yeah, no, I think this work is really exciting. I mean, there is the thing with documentary photographers where there's always that question of how far can you take this until
Right.
you've done it already or something like that. Like I think we look at photographers like Bruce Davidson and different documentary photographers and oftentimes say like, oh, are they doing the same thing over and over now, or are they shifting and changing?
Right. And some don't shift and change, and some really do. Yeah.
I mean, Bruce Gilden is a photographer, that street photographer,
Yeah.
Bruce Gilden, who I actually think later in life, he really did shift when he went from all those street photographs that were black and white and very much about the moment to those portraits that he did later in life, that are
Yeah.
color.
Oh, I don't even think I know them, because I definitely have one image of him as this like distorted, in your face.
His stuff is still aggressive, but now it's portraits,
Okay, that's so interesting.
Once you see one, you will not forget it.
Yeah. Okay. I think maybe I know them with the flash and at country fairs. They're not kind, I think.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I really react to his because because they seem unkind almost.
Kind of.
And I don't think he is an unkind person at all. I don't know. Yeah. Or they're not flattering, but maybe people, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So this is what I'm doing now, and who knows what will come of it.
Yeah, no, it's